3 hospitals terminated and the baby died.
Okay. So just one request. You just have to be slightly louder than normal.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, we're rolling. You can begin.
Good morning, everyone. On Wednesday, the 12th of October, here in Bombay or Mumbai, and we have here three of us, old stagers, who have been associated in one way or the other with the Water Sanitation, Water Supplies and Sanitation Collaborative Council. But introducing the principal actors, here on my right is Ranjith Wirasinha, who was the initiator and the first executive secretary of the Collaborative Council, and has been instrumental in actually setting it on its feet and on its way. Next to him is Ashok Chatterjee, who, apart from his work for the Collaborative Council in developing its first Vision 21, has been active in Gujarat, in the civil society movement, and in taking the issues of the marginalized forward. So here we are, three old stagers, probably on the road to the exit door rather than the entrance door. So, Ranjit, early days and new days, anything that strikes you as being different?
I think let me say why the council came into being. I think at the end of the drinking water decade, there was this environment of diminishing resources, and also kind of a lopsided situation between the external support agencies and the developing countries, and it needed an arrangement to bring them on a equal footing, in a sense. And the council was conceived to attend to this, and also the main issue was the number of people still unserved with water supply and sanitation. The council mechanism that was conceived was to be a small secretariat piggybacked on an existing organization, so that you don't have one more organization thrown into the field for coordination, and so provide an umbrella. The form of the council needed to be inclusive, bring everyone in, and also very neutral. It does not answer to anyone but to all. Everyone in the council needed to be equal. I mean, the World Bank needed to be equal with the smallest country in the world. So that was the kind of organizational setup that was required. I was with the Asian Development Bank at that time, and I was asked to be the chief executive to set this up. And Maggie Cartley-Carlson was a minister in the Canadian government who had access to, at the highest levels in the world, was brought in as the honorary chair to provide 10 to 12 days in the year for when it was needed to knock on important doors. That was the setup of the council. Between then and now, I feel that there isn't, in one sense, enough connection between one forum to the other. We had, during that time, for issues that were considered high priority, that was also part of the mechanism to correct this imbalance. We set up things called working groups, which they were maybe around 20 persons to a working group. It could be more, but that was about the right size, but equally represented by the developing countries and the external support agencies. And they were expected to deal with an issue and come up with recommendations at the next forum. So you had a balanced recommendation coming for consensus building during the global forum. And so there was a connect between one forum to the other, partly because of these working groups, and the working groups, unlike in the past, that is before the council was formed, the working groups were the people who made decisions, rather provided recommendations that were accepted to a consensus operation to be the way forward on that particular issue area, if that answers the question.
Yeah.
And I think now I feel that connect is a little, but I think the council still continues providing the platform and an umbrella for everyone to be in, that's inclusive and neutral, and for all to have an opportunity of making their views felt and helping in the decision making in a global sense.
Yeah, Ashok, are you willing to hazard any kind of opinion on whether there's a tension between the idea of small and inclusive and large and hierarchical? Has there been a shift, or do you think the values still carry us forward?
I think when the council started, it wasn't really an issue of a balance between the small and the large, but it was, as you rightly point out, and as Ranjith has just mentioned, a question of making sure that voices are heard. That was back then, and it still is the challenge today. I think the real issue that faces us in terms of the council are two. One is, Ranjit pointed out, this is perhaps the only international, multinational space that I know of where everyone who participates meets as equals.
Right.
That is something which happened perhaps by accident, but it was an invaluable resource. The second is the whole challenge of answering the question of numbers. When we have such millions of people without water and sanitation, and yet the council came into existence because chasing numbers was not creating the results that people wanted. And that challenge remains with us today, because we still don't understand what scaling up actually means. What is it that has to be scaled up? We're still chasing numbers.
Do you think the answer might lie with, not with old fogies like us, but the new generation? And do you think it's time for the old lions to slink away and for the new lions to enter through the door? Is there a generational issue here?
Well, I think as far as India is concerned, maybe on the subcontinent that's already happening. They're not looking at us grey-haired wallas to produce the answers. The answers are coming. But I think the real issue that challenges them is that the past experience does not seem to have been captured in a way that they can avoid the same mistakes that our generation did. I think that's been our failure. We haven't been able to communicate that.
Yeah.
I would agree with Ashok in this, and I would also say, I mean, the younger generation needs to take charge, certainly, not forgetting the lessons learned and some connection with the older generation. But the world is changing. The issues may not have changed so drastically. The numbers are still the issue. But one of the big things that we did during that period was Vision 21, coming up with a framework that would address these problems, not being specific to any area. But if you look at the Vision 21 principles, it's generic. It's not just for water and sanitation. Those principles can be applied to any sector. And if you apply those principles, you find a way forward, and it has all the participatory, demand responsive side. And it is getting everyone involved. So those principles, unfortunately, I feel needs to be given a reminder, given a reminder and a boost, because that is a framework that was produced, I mean, through a tremendously large participatory process, global participatory process. Ashok was at the helm of that, helm of the Vision 21 framework, and I think we need to give that a push. It's much more younger generation and older generation, but a framework that is kind of it's for all time.
Yeah.
It's for all time.
Well,
I mean,
think
sorry.
one thing I'd just like to mention is that the people who are at the helm of Vision 21 were over 300 community groups. We were the channel, but we were not the ones who created the vision. The vision came from them. And the fact that we could mobilize so many groups in every part of the world, from disadvantaged, marginalized communities by and large, but in partnership with other stakeholders, I think that was the real demonstration over much cynicism, because it was often dismissed as a kind of Mickey Mouse exercise that had nothing to do with the real world. But we were able to indicate that the real world are these voices.
Yeah.
And I think that was the advantage. The principles did not come from a drafting team. It came from these groups in every part of the world.
Yeah, so interesting. It's not just what Vision 21 said, but how it arrived at what it said. And as you say, the process, and everyone participated. Now, looking at the current scenario.
I'd like to add something more which is very important here, and on Vision 21, it is that Vision 21 is owned by everyone. It does not belong to any organization like either World Bank or the Collaborative Council, but it is, I mean, the way it was done, it is not owned by the Collaborative Council, it's owned by the world. It's owned by Vision 21, has ownership, and so that is very important.
So in a sense, the whole process was imbued with a spirit of openness and sharing, and in a sense, a setting aside of the ego of the individuals. So the principle of leave your flags at the door and come in and open yourselves to discourse and conversation. Do you think this principle is being diluted a little? There's so much competition. Brands, we want our badge and we want our recognition and we want our logos. Is this the sort of thing that seems to be overtaking some of the discourse nowadays? I mean,
I would say that it is, largely because in recent years we have misunderstood the marketing terms that we use. I mean, I come from that background. I started life in marketing, but the way people talk about brands and the way they talk about having our logo and our identity is a complete antithesis to the Vision 21 spirit. Vision 21 was not a brand, it was a movement. It wasn't market driven, it was the market. There's a difference between these things. So I think one of the problems is that to make things look sexy and trendy now, we put these things on them, but they mean nothing to the poor. They're stuck with a brand, which is poverty, and they don't want it. But we use these marketing terms to describe a situation in which the market must be a tool. It is not the issue. It is only a means of promoting the issue, as is happening right here with sanitation. It is a marketing problem. But the market is not the only answer to this issue. It's a human rights problem. And the human rights issue is not a branding issue. It is a value issue. It's a principle issue. So go back to what Ranjith was saying. That was the advantage of Vision 21. It was not connected with any brand, with any image, with any logo, and even though it was the umbrella of the Collaborative Council, the Council was very happy to give the ownership to other people.
Well, let's hope that
There's also another area of concern to me in terms of branding and I think we had more than adequate organizations in the world dealing with these activities. I see that now so many other agencies have come into being entirely in this area of monitoring and advocacy. Monitoring and advocacy. And I think they have, I mean, unfortunately they are there. I mean, if you look at the monitoring area, there was the joint monitoring program. All these could have been taken under the umbrella of the joint monitoring program, and their mandate increased and all of these things brought in. But I'm hoping that now that they are there, that the collaborative council would be able to provide an umbrella for them to work together rather than separately. And they should not, each one of them should not have an ownership to what they are doing and have a brand name and the other. They need to come just like Vision 21, if brought under the collaborative council umbrella, that they move forward with everyone owning whatever comes out and working towards those.
So this seems to be the opportune time to rediscover or at least reread Vision 21 and try to understand what it really means.
And perhaps we have an opportunity in what you have just led in Colombo, Ranjith, through SACOSAN, which is the South Asian Sanitation Movement, that perhaps regionally we can do this job. To make a demonstration to our other partners that at least in South Asia, we're not going to push this aside. We're going to see Vision 21 as the central approach to what is basically a human rights issue.
Okay, so let's look forward to the rest of the 21st century, which we might not see the end of, with some optimism.
I'm going to invest in a walking stick for the next.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.